Hey everyone, so this is our third installment of the podcast series. I'm Joss,
Carol,
Sylvia.
Ariane.
and today we're excited that Sylvia's here to talk to us about her experiences with some women's retreats.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about it. First of all, can we just get some recognition for the shirt? I got it on Women's Land, which is great. I was so happy to see they were selling it there.
awesome.
Um, yeah, so it was my first time. First of all, for people who don't know, Women's Land is essentially a campground weekend retreat, week retreat where it's female only, all women. Um, and I went to my first one ever about a week ago. And I actually went to two. I went to one that was like 5 days, and then another one that was 3 or 4 days. So in total, it was a little over a week long, and it was, I word it nothing short of the best week of my life. I felt this huge transformation, and I'm going to go back every year for the rest of my life, if I can swing it. It was that profound. Um,
Can I ask what do you think was so profound about it? Like what was
I've been trying to figure that out while, so when I was there, I um I was like, I can feel that I'm learning a lesson right now, but I don't know what it is. So and of course I brought my tarot cards. So I pulled a card to be like, what am I learning right now? And it was the justice card, which told me it was basically about balancing and I think that's kind of what I learned was balancing being myself and protecting myself and celebrating being a woman, being with other women, connecting with women, like just learning all of the great things that I can gain from that female to female connection that is a little harder to tap into in the real world where there's men involved and women are interacting with men and women interact with women consciously aware that there are men watching or men perceiving, um, and just to be in a place where that's all gone and it is just about owning who you are and no filters. um and I think just being in that environment, I got to be in touch with a part of myself. I just constantly was saying my inner child is thriving right now. I got to do all the crazy stuff that I wouldn't get to do um, in in society, like running naked through a rainstorm, right? With like having a race and just being like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? You can't do that. And to be able to do that sort of thing and feel completely safe and to not feel objectified or sexualized. And there were plenty of lesbians there, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as having the male gaze or having a straight man there. Um, and it, I think also the for me, the feminist consciousness raising was a huge aspect that I really enjoyed. Um, but that definitely wasn't the whole thing. And there were plenty of women who were there who weren't there to do the feminist activism stuff. And it also could just be a great party. Um, so it was just great to see just female joy. And I don't know, I could go on and on about what I loved about it and what made it the most profound, but I hope that answered the question.
the safety thing though is a big part of that, huh?
Yeah, and it's the first 2 nights I was there, I had nightmares. And it was really interesting. The very first night I was there, I had some really bad nightmares about being chased, about being, like voyeurism and all these things. And I talked to a woman about it the next day. She goes, yeah, you carry a lot of trauma, you carry a lot of anxiety every day that you just have become so accustomed to that you don't even think about it. It's like when something's like tapping you and you get tapped by it so much you stop feeling it. That's kind of what it's like. And then to be in a space where that's no longer there, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know how much of a weight that was. So then to be able to have a week where that was just gone was amazing. The safety was, yeah. No other place could I walk alone at 3 a.m. in the middle of a woods and just feel. And we had security. Like I worked security one night, the graveyard shift, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like I was ready to like fight a bear if
But
I
that
had
that
to.
analogy is really profound, though. The way that she put that about having that constant drip that you stop realizing is happening until it's not there anymore. That's very profound.
There were a lot of like truth bombs being dropped like that just throughout the whole week. Yeah.
One thing I sometimes have talked about with other people I know who went to an all women's college, because I went to Smith, is it's a very hard thing to explain, but it's sort of like you notice how women behave differently when there's men in the room. And when I was at Smith, I didn't really go to any classes where there was like a large proportion of men. Sometimes men do take classes from the neighboring colleges, but I was talking to a friend of mine who said there's sort of a critical mass where like if the class becomes more than a certain percentage male, then the women start behaving differently and the whole atmosphere changes. When you were there, did you sort of become more aware of this phenomenon of how women behave differently?
You know, I personally didn't notice that. I think with watching other women, but I definitely noticed it within myself, and maybe with some of the people I hung out with. Just this freedom and the insecurities just vanished. You know, it was no longer odd to have body hair, and I no longer felt that I had to make myself smaller or, you know, more palatable. Like I just was free to just be 110% myself with no consequences. And if anything, I being celebrated for being myself in all of my eccentricities. And I think that, you know, so I noticed women being happier and just thriving, and then coming back into society. I feel that I notice ways that women softly mute themselves, whether next to their husbands or just taking up space or giving their opinion. And it's interesting. And I tried to promise myself that I wasn't going to alter how I behave, that I was going to just hold on to this power that I was able to tap into and carry it with me, and that I wasn't going to let the world like beat it out of me again. And I think so far I've been able to hold on to it, but we'll see how it lasts in a year.
I went to a lesbian retreat that was like 3 days long, and it was primarily only women and lesbians. We were at a campsite place that had cabins and stuff, and there were like 2 men that kind of worked there in the kitchen, so you kind of saw guys, but you know, it was pretty much just lesbians and women only. And the thing that I noticed really profoundly was just how comfortable I became with my body, just being around women and being around just, you know, these particular types of women who valued feminist consciousness, valued the lesbian experience, valued women in all their shapes and sizes. Like there was, you know, I think you have to come to it with already some consciousness about like how this stuff works. You know, you can't just like, you can't kidnap just maybe an average woman off the street and throw her in here. It might not work the greatest.
Yeah.
But I did really notice just how comfortable I was with my body. I just didn't, you know, especially for me, it especially was my weight. I didn't think about my weight, my body in that way, because there was so many women there of all so many different sizes, and no one cared, you know.
I said this earlier, I've never seen so many different types of women, like the range of diversity within the female body and expression is just so vast. It blew my mind. And I've never seen so many different types of boobs. I've never seen so many women with facial hair. Eh, I honestly didn't realize women could grow facial hair at the rate that they do. And I'm here and I'm seeing these women with full on goatees. Some have beards, a cute little mustache. And I'm sitting here being like, well, I want a mustache. Like, that's really cute. You really rock that. And you wouldn't get that here. It's all about here being society. You know, it's all about lasering the hair off or waxing it off. And it's like, women shouldn't have to change how we look naturally. I totally felt the same way, feeling a lot more comfortable in my body, which I was not expecting.
Did you also have the experience of some of maybe the older women telling you to speak up,
so
use your voice? I loved that. We had an older lesbian that was just like, women are so used to speaking quietly, speak up, use your voice. And it was great.
Well, so the first camp I went to, we had an intergenerational workshop where women in their 20s all the way to their 80s met, and we had break-off groups, and then we all came together, and it was really interesting listening to the older lesbians and the younger lesbians and the things that we wanted and the things we didn't like, and how they kind of sometimes worked in tandem. Like the older women in the oldest generation talked about how they really want to be able to share their stories, and the younger generation on our own said, we really want to hear the stories from the older generations. And we hadn't talked about it, and it was just so great to be like, oh good, we both want each other. But then it was also kind of sad, because it was like, you know, how are we going to connect to each other? And the internet, I actually ended up writing an acto, which is like a 5-minute play about young lesbians and old lesbians finding each other. But that's a whole other conversation. But you know, the older lesbians said that they want the young women to speak up and to, you know, do stuff to try to make things better for women and girls and lesbians. And ironically, the young lesbians were like, we're tired of being told that we're not doing enough. We're trying, and we are doing things, but it's really hard out there, especially on the internet, and it's not like it used to be. And it was just, that was one of my favorite workshops, was the intergenerational sharing, because it was just so great to know that the older lesbians want to be there for us younger lesbians. And I think it helped some of the older women feel a little more hopeful for the future, to see so many young women coming with such determination to keep the fire going, so to speak. So yeah, the whole speak up thing definitely did happen quite a bit.
So these events that you went to, they had they also had like an educational component too, right? Or like a empowering component, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I don't know, tell me what you saw there on the workshops.
So the first festival I went to was definitely, I felt more consciousness raising, feminist focused, where the workshops were about, like, we had a workshop about learning about female biology, where we learned about the clitoris, and we made little clay clitorises, as a retired gynecologist taught us what all the parts were and how it works and everything. And I learned some stuff, and it was really cool, you know. Then, but there's also like archery and you know, arts and crafts, stitching and bitching was what they called it. And I did learn how to sew, which was fun. But yeah, there was definitely this awareness coming into the land of why we're here and why it's so important to have women only, female only spaces. that was not so much at the second one I went to. It was still there, but I got there and I was like, oh, this one seems more like a party thing, which is great. I'm here to party. But, you know, I was also like, when's the revolution happening, y'all? Like, are we, come on, like, we're here, let's plan now. But that was not necessarily what everyone was there for. Some people just wanted to be there for the music, which I can respect. And at the second festival, there still were workshops, you know, like there was a detransition workshop, and there was anti-racism workshop, and some other really good ones that were educational or consciousness raising based.
Wait, you're telling me that these weren't conservative right wingers you were around?
No, you know, and it's interesting. Yeah, there it was very, I think, fairly diverse in the political spectrum, but definitely more hippie, lefty, you know, very, like, there was maybe one woman who the way she said, like, we don't talk about I don't talk about politics. I kind of was like, is that because everyone gets mad at you when you speak about it? But I will also say it was refreshing to be able to talk with women and have some tough conversations where we didn't always agree on things, which is such a, you know, crazy thing these days. But, you know, like, one woman started talking to me about how I think she assumed that I was a they, them or something, because she was like, just be careful with like what you say around here, because I don't want someone to call you sister. And I was like, I had been calling people sister the whole time. Like, I was being like, thanks, sister. Bye, sister. Have a good night, sister. Like, I love the word sister now. But so this woman, I think, thought that I was a queer or something. But I told her, I was like, well, no, I really appreciate female only spaces, and here's why. And that conversation ended with her crying, but like in a good way, about how important it is for women and girls, especially girls that are her daughter's age, to be able to see women that look like me and who are proud to be women, and to see butch lesbians and you know, women with facial hair and all these things, because, you know, she was crying about how her daughter said that she doesn't want to be a girl because she doesn't want to be seen. She just wants to be invisible. Her daughter's 12, and she started crying, and it's like, and I don't know what to do for her. And I tried to tell her, you know, I struggle with dysphoria. I didn't identify as a woman for a number of years. Like, I get it. The best thing you can do is just love her and let her know that it's not easy being a woman and growing into womanhood, especially, you know, now. But that there are places like this where she can just be free from that. And so we'll see what happens with her daughter. But I think it was a good conversation, and it wouldn't have happened if, you know, we hadn't been able to be like, are we going to disagree on some topics here? Like, I'm not really sure, but that was refreshing for sure.
It kind of makes me wonder how she felt about some of the other women there, if she was they, them, and you.
I know,
like,
I get
mean,
they them'd a lot more than I, you know, people. I love just the fear in their people's eyes when they're like, thank you, thank you, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, don't worry, I'm not going to scream. Anyway,
So
yeah,
was there a difference in the demographics between the two events you were at?
like age-wise or just in
Age-wise, or
general?
anything else you noticed?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, the first one was very white, but they're working on it. And you know, I think part of the problem with that is an inability to advertise, and just not being able to like post anywhere like, hey, this week this is happening, it's women only, like, we'd love for you to come. Another woman at one of the workshops said how it's important to really extend invitations and not assume that just posting about it is going to make someone feel like they're welcome, but that sometimes you have to really just reach out and be like, hey, we want you here. But so that was that. Then as far as like age, it was very mixed. I would say the youngest was 19 at the first festival. The youngest was 19 and the oldest was like early 80s, early or mid 80s. And I would say the mode, which is the most frequent number that showed up, I had to look that up. The mode was like 40s, probably 40s, 50s for the first one. For the second one, it was much wider, and I'd say it was probably the average was closer to like 30s. Or maybe that's just who I was hanging out with the most. But it was yeah, it was a wide range, and there was a wide it was pretty accessible, you know, like both camps were fairly wheelchair accessible as best as they could be in the middle of a forest. But that was very nice to see. There was one woman there who was blind, and she had a seeing eye dog who, when she took the harness off and gave me permission, I was allowed to pet, which I was very, very happy about. So that was awesome. And the woman who was blind actually was just, she was killing it at archery, which was amazing. And, you know, anyway, I have so many stories and so many incredible women that I met. It's like, I'm still processing and digesting it all.
So I'm curious about after going to one of these events and after experiencing them, how do you feel about the fact that these have to be underground?
Makes me very, very upset, because these festivals and this sort of community is, frankly, I think the single greatest thing to happen to women. Having a space that is built by women, that is for women, that's all about empowering us, is the absolute best thing that could happen for women globally, you know, and will help healing and building bridges between ideologies and backgrounds. And there's just so much potential. It makes me really upset that we have to keep these on the hush hush, because it makes it really inaccessible for most women. And like, unless you know someone or you get lucky, there's no way that you'll have access to these spaces. And you know, there was a lot of important conversations that happened there, and it breaks my heart. And I don't know what the solution is. And I wish that these spaces could be protected under law. You know, and I also know that the bigger they get, the more security we would need. And it's just like, I know that maybe logistically we can't have tens of thousands of women going to these things. Like maybe that's just not how they're supposed to work. But at the very least, I would love to have like every state have at least 5 that are just accessible and, you know, are well known. And yeah, I don't know the future of women's land, but I know that it's going to be an integral part of women's liberation, and even just women being our best selves, especially lesbians, because lesbians have no need to go to a festival where there's men. Like, why would I go to that?
So I guess that kind of leads into a little bit second part to that question is like, how do you feel like these events would be important to lesbians, or if we had lesbian only events, say?
So yeah, this festival definitely, not that I really had any doubts, but it definitely confirmed, like, yeah, I am going to be so happy being a lesbian. And this is just awesome. Like, how lucky am I that this this is my dating pool. You know, which sounds, you know, which is funny, but it's really true. Like growing up, I didn't know what a lesbian looked like. You know, I either saw like the gross caricatures or I saw the pornified version, and I didn't see myself in that, and I couldn't see myself dating that. And then I get to go to this place where there's real women who are just being themselves and are being badasses and who are not self-conscious at all. And I'm just like, yes, like you are the type of woman that I can connect with, right? I think I was able to see myself. I was able to see maybe a potential partner in some of the women, you know. I just saw a future for myself, and I saw a community. And because I never felt that I had that community, I didn't feel I had a future, which made it really hard growing up. And it made it really hard as a young lesbian woman wanting to continue life, because I didn't think there was anything for me. And that's, you know, hard to admit and somewhat embarrassing, but it's the truth. And I can just imagine these teenage girls, or, you know, women who are just, you know, coming into their 20s, who were like me, just completely lost and don't know who they are. And if they could come to a place like this where they can be surrounded by confident women and confident lesbians who, you know what it's like to face homophobia, but still keep their head up, like that's just the best. And I have so many women now who are like my mentors, and are lifelong friends. And I would not have any of those connections had I not gone to this place. And I hope that every lesbian, every bisexual, and hell, every woman gets a chance to go to these festivals at least one time, because it is so important for your sense of self and your well-being, I think.
Yeah, I would have a question about the breakdown between how many lesbian and bisexual women there were versus heterosexual women. And was there any weird stuff about, like sometimes there
Yeah,
can be some weird
yeah.
stuff when heterosexual women are like, I don't know if that lesbian's looking at me, or was there any of that? Like,
Well, there wasn't any of that um that I knew about. But there was, you know, an instance where there was a supposed to be lesbian only workshop, and one woman showed up who was bisexual. Well, she identified as queer. And what was interesting is that every single lesbian in the lesbian workshop said, "Don't call me queer. I hate the word queer." And the one woman who was bisexual said, "Actually, I like being called queer, so we should just respect what people like being called," which fair, but also, is it possible? Like, why do you think you enjoy being called queer and all of the lesbians don't? Like, let's maybe unpack that for a second. And I had some strong opinions about why she might enjoy the word queer versus just saying she's bisexual. You know, she didn't say she was pansexual, but she did say, "No, I'm technically bi, but I prefer queer because it's just all encompassing." And I'm like, "See, and that's why I don't like the word, because it tells me nothing." And so that was interesting, and it kind of it there was some weirdness, I think, and there was I think that conversation of, you know, do you enjoy being called queer? Why or why not? Is an important conversation. But the fact that this was specifically saying this is a lesbian workshop for lesbians, we're going to be talking about lesbian issues. And then all of a sudden, all of the lesbians there are tone policed and are basically said, well, don't totally crap on the word queer because some people will enjoy it. And it's just like, even here, we can't talk about what bullshit we think that is. Like, we have to be sensitive to feelings. So I don't know. And no one was rude, I don't think, but it was just a moment, you know?
Yes, it's interesting how if you have a group of, people who are of the same sort and an outsider comes in, it really can throw off the whole atmosphere and shut people down.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask if, like, I'm just trying to put myself in her mind. Do you think that maybe she felt like there wasn't another opportunity for her to engage with like a more lesbian space, and so she thought this was the only place she could do it? Or
And that might have been it, honestly, you know, which is unfortunate that there aren't more spaces that are sapphic or women loving women, you know. Or maybe she just thought that lesbian was being used as an umbrella term, because everything's an umbrella term these days. But yeah, I don't know. And it's also hard to gauge too, when someone says they're queer, if that means that they're hetero leaning or homo leaning, or if they're exactly 50-50. Like, you don't, you know, at least I think with her, I got the sense that she was maybe hetero leaning. But that's just all speculation at this point.
Maybe she just kind of, she identified more with lesbians. Maybe she just identified as a lesbian.
We are pretty cool, so I could understand that.
I've seen a lot of that. That's so
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
it's true that it does seem like there's a subset of bisexual women, but even some straight women actually, who really want to be a lesbian, sort of, or like, you know, want to use that culture for some reason, either maybe for feminist reasons or neo-pagan reasons is another thing I see. Yeah, so yeah, curious if that played a role with this.
That said, we also had some really interesting gold star discourse where this one woman claimed she's bisexual because she had slept with a man in the past, and she believed that any woman who's ever slept with a man ever at all is bisexual. And that that was a campfire discussion, and things really blew up. And you know, I was just like, wow, let's talk about that. You know, and again, it was one of those times where it was like there was a clear like divide by the campfire, and some feelings were hurt in that campfire discussion. But we got through it, and we talked about it. And you know, I was like, well, then I guess I and most lesbians would be called bisexual then, even. But a lot of learning happened in that conversation, which is honestly a very good thing. And the woman who said that is really sweet. And I like her a lot. And again, she's one of those like lifelong friend people. And it was just great to hear an opinion that I had truly never heard before, and to discuss it in depth and agree and disagree and be able to still have s'mores at the end of the day, which is what's important, don't you think?
Yeah, as long as you get that toasted marshmallow.
I did burn myself on my leg though, and it's
They're vegan
rough.
marshmallows now, so everybody can enjoy a s'more.
Everyone can enjoy.
But it sounds like that you had that experience of really being able to agree to disagree and to just discuss topics. And that's something that we talk about a lot, is like the absence of gray area, that there's so much black and white in the discourse around LGBT and LGBT and QIA and all this, that it's important for us to find the sweet spot and to kind of stay there and be in that gray area and exchange ideas with people and learn. You have actually a TikTok that's really good about that as well.
Is it a 6 or is it a 9 TikTok?
It might be. Yeah, I think it is. It was like, I think it was a two-parter. It was about learning from somebody, like listening to somebody else and learning from them on the one hand, and on the other hand,
no, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
it just
that's a good
entrenching
one.
you deeper in your own because you're able to defend your point of view or whatnot.
Right. Yeah. Listening to someone who you blatantly disagree with and having an open mind and coming out of it either with your mind changed or being like, well, actually, no, I still agree with what I was saying, and I have a stronger grasp as to my reasoning why. It's, yeah.
It's
I
important to know what the other side's thinking and saying and doing, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you insulate yourself, you're going to be really screwed if you ever have to actually fight for your beliefs or stand up for your beliefs.
right. And how do you know that your beliefs have any legs to stand on if you're not talking with people and finding out where the logical holes are, or learning new information that you didn't previously know? It's yeah.
I really do miss the agree to disagree. I love that. Let's just stop now. Let's drop it. We're not going to agree, but there's other things we can agree on, or we can just have a meal or something. Like, we don't need to keep going with this. I'm an atheist, but I've had a lot of religious friends over the years. And, that's just the way we've handled a lot of that, is to say, we're not going to discuss that aspect because no one's winning anybody over here. That's just, it's a dead conversation. So
Yeah. And I
it's
think,
something really lacking in the LGBT community that is so needed.
yeah. And I think that being on women's land, the starting point of agreement is we're all women, we're all adult human females, which some say means woman, or some people just means adult female human, whatever. And we all think that there should be a female only space where we can go and have community with each other. And those two things are what unify all of us. And then we celebrate all of our differences, and we learn from each other, and we grow with each other. And that I think is what was the most profound thing, Carol. I'm going to take back my first answer and say that the most profound thing was the fact that women from all different backgrounds, all different ages, sexual orientations, all came together as women, unified by the idea that we all want this sacred space that is women only. And from that point on, we were able to just create something beautiful.
I like that. That's wonderfully put.
Yeah, that's really nice, and it's heartening for me to hear as someone, I think the only one here that hasn't been to a women's retreat um, ever,
We're
but
going to have to
certainly,
fix that. We're going to
yeah,
have to fix that.
yeah. It's the woman, it's the women helping women, the womaning up. I don't know if that's a way to put it, but um, seeing it's something that I make a practice in my personal life to stop if I see women that I think are in peril or in danger or something, to watch, to look, to be there, be ready to intercede if I need to, and to have that in over the course of a week in real time of women being there for each other. And Carol, you mentioned the one you went to, like somebody needed something, somebody else would had it. Another woman would come through and had that thing that you needed, and
Oh,
right at
yeah.
the right time, and just that.
Especially lesbians. I feel like we're over prepared for everything. Does someone have a trash can? Well, I have a trash can.
It's so nice to see that sense of community and togetherness and cohesion, and agreeing to disagree and just be human together. It's really heartening. I'm glad to hear about your experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to what seems like a natural conclusion here. It's been really nice hearing about this, your time on the land, and Carol and Ariane's previous discussion about it as well. But thank you
Thanks
for.
for letting me share, and I could talk about it forever, and I'll can't wait to tell you some of the other non-podcast appropriate stories that happened.
The after hours discussion.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm here for it. Thank you all for being here tonight to discuss this with us and hear and thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.